It's a continuation of looking out for fake news, fake accounts, more cyber activity, more bots. It's only increasing. It's really, really difficult to find accounts to be sure that what you're sharing is valid and factual. You have to triple check everything. You have to double check. You have to know the sources. But even then, it's deceptive. The other day, I was convinced that something was a BBC Twitter account, and it turned out to be completely different. Just the familiar logo, the coloring, and the placement of the letters was the same, but then it turned out it was a completely fake account, and had to untweet and undo retweet and all of that because it was complete fake Twitter account. I think it's only increasing. It's only going to increase.
The biggest challenge facing Twitter users in 2022 is certainly still the risk of a takeover by Elon Musk of Twitter. And here in Brussels, we have teamed up. It's a very small group for the time being with some colleagues and friends to create a Mastodon EU policy point social as a potential alternative. And I think we will have to learn to start mirroring our Twitter activity on Mastodon to be ready if this happens, or for that matter, if another mogul takes over Twitter.
It will be first on Twitter, which is of course very, very important. It also helps me to get background on certain topics. Helps me to find stuff that I do not easily find on Google. One point of criticism is, of course, that they have, especially in the United States, not always been following standards of policing that are fair. They have used double standards. I think it doesn't make any sense that Donald Trump is being banned from Twitter while all kinds of dodgy people, terrorists, in the case of the Taliban, have been able to, communicate freely. You can ban Trump because he's suspected of something, fair enough, but then I don't think you can allow the Iranian regime to freely spread its hatred on Twitter, which is the case now. I would be inclined to, allow many different kinds of people there. I would only draw the line at, incitement to violence, incitement to hatred. I would tolerate. Hatred is not something that is so easy to define. And I think, especially in the political debates, you have to tolerate a lot of, let's say, less than elegant statements in order to, have a proper debate. And I think the safeguards that we have on Twitter, the fact that people can call each other out, can correct each other, that everybody can then judge for themselves whether something actually amounts to hatred or not. I think that is sufficient, and may be wrong, of course, but that's my view on this.
What is the biggest challenge facing Twitter users in the EU in 2022? I think the biggest challenge and the biggest trap that Twitter users can fall into is thinking things are bigger than they are because they're big on Twitter. I think a lot of us, particularly in journalism and politics, lose sight of the fact that only a small minority of people are on Twitter. So when something seems really huge on Twitter, it seems like a big discussion point, it may not really be resonating with the public. And I think as we progress further with the Ukraine war, it's good to keep this in mind, because I think that there is a certain consensus opinion or strength of feeling about the Ukraine war that exists on Twitter that I don't see replicated among the public as large, at least not in the same way. So I think the biggest challenge is getting out of that bubble, getting off Twitter for a bit, and talking to people kind of out in the real world.
Hi ZN, it's a real pleasure to be here. What is the biggest challenge facing Twitter users in the EU in 2022? Well, there are lots: fake accounts and doxing and rising digital authoritarianism, like governments blocking journalists so it's harder for them to do their jobs and rebut propaganda. But I think a good candidate for the biggest issue is the kind of free speech absolutism being promoted by Elon Musk and other hardcore libertarians. Their agenda is dangerous and regressive. Yes, content moderation is tough. Yes, there always will be regrettable trade-offs. But content moderation, be it self-regulation or something legally required, is not censorship. It's doing our best to overcome the technical and human obstacles to letting society interact peaceably. We mustn't give up on obliging social media platforms to be in tune with the times, especially given the reckonings that we've had with gender and race and climate. I fear that Musk-style free speech absolutism is just another way of directing an even bigger hosepipe of hate at those movements like Me Too and Black Lives Matter and Fridays for Future that so many free speech absolutists don't like anyway. Last time I checked, we don't want more digital harassment campaigns driven by algorithmic confirmation bias. We want fewer.
Biggest challenge facing tweeters in the EU in 2022? Keep going. Such a challenge. Twitter has been around for years now. We know the problems. We know about the trolls. We know about the abuse that a lot of people get far too much of. We know that people have been looking at alternatives, whether that's TikTok or their Substack newsletters. But Twitter is a unique space where you can have those debates. You can get senior officials, you can get politicians engaged in those debates if we can keep that level of engagement, if we can make sure we keep people on the site rather than thinking one piece of abuse too many, I need to go. And that does mean also continuing to lobby Twitter to make sure that some of the most unpleasant trolls are removed. There is a regulatory element as well, but yeah, keep going, keep trying to engage, and keep trying to encourage people to engage.